Welcome to Drinks and Dystopia, the podcast. Using the Ansible to spread across the word across the galaxy.
Using the what?
Ansible?
Ansible?
Yeah, so it's Ansible. It's a machine that spreads word instantaneously across the galaxy.
Oh, okay.
The Ansible?
Ansible. I'm not familiar with that term.
Well, it's the longest, weirdest tagline of all time.
Yeah. Should we try another one, or is there a tagline? If it's like, imagine that on a poster. Like, how much that would have been.
Do you have one?
Definitely not. No.
Drinks Dystopia.
How are you?
I'm alright. Warm, but that's about it.
It's been 2 weeks since we did one of these.
I can't believe that. Well, I totally can believe it. That's totally in line with our usual sort of ability to schedule.
We might have to be a bi-weekly podcast rather than a weekly podcast.
Yeah, so this is just we're bi-curious at the moment. We're just trying it out.
Trying it out, seeing whether to do it once a week or once every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, so mini question this week.
Yeah.
Happens with spoilers.
Oh, okay.
So we post this on Sunday night, so we've not seen the program in question. So the question tonight is, what do you think is going to happen in Westworld Season 2?
Oh.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because me and Lee are obsessed with Westworld like no other television show that we've ever watched, the first season. And it starts again on Sunday. So if you haven't seen the first video, I'll put a little indicator of where you can skip forward to when we're not talking all of this TV nonsense. But this is the mini question this week.
Okay.
Because we are very proud of the fact that we guessed very early on in Westworld what was happening.
Yeah, like really smugly.
Smug.
Yeah.
Full of smug.
But it was, to be fair, like even
to be fair to how great I am.
But like, well, yeah, I suppose it's just a few of them I didn't even know were twists. I assumed they wanted us to know. Like, for example, the Man in Black, which in the very first episode that you see him, which is the second episode, I believe.
It's the second episode you see him, yeah.
And he, just before he's leaving, he has to pick a white hat or a black hat, which is exactly the same as Ed Harris's hat. I was like, oh, so he's Ed Harris. And I assumed we were supposed to know that through the whole season. And then at the end, that's a twist. And you're like, but I thought that was obvious that he was Ed Harris and it was doing flashbacks.
See, now that one I didn't know for a few episodes in. And then you started seeing the old Westworld logo, and it was like robots that were appearing in the current storyline were back there with him. So I guessed it a few episodes in. But the Bernard one, I was on. I was like, he's in a different room. That's the past.
Yeah, as soon as it was flashing to Bernard and he was dressed differently in a different room, you're like, oh, so this is a flashback or something, some description, and you're like, this isn't going to be Bernard.
And his name was literally an anagram of the other name.
Sort of, yeah, almost.
No, it is.
It's not though, is it?
It's an exact anagram of his full name.
Oh, of his full name?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because he's Bernard, and the original guy was...
Albert.
Was he Albert?
Arnold.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was like... We called that pretty early on. I was fairly certain Bernard was a robot version of Arnold pretty early on.
But we are horrible nerds, so like I don't think you were meant to care. I think you were just meant to go with the flow. I mean, you were like, we can't do it. We must rewatch and know everything.
Yeah.
So, what are your big calls for season 2?
Well, this is funny because...
wait, this isn't spoilers because we don't know, obviously.
No.
Just want to clarify that. So if you're listening, like, how dare you tell me that? This is all guessing.
Yeah,
so,
we don't know. But as I said to you, I think I need to rewatch because it's been like over almost a year now.
It's been a hard year.
Yeah, so I can't actually remember a lot of the subtleties of the show, which is what's so good about it, is that there are such subtle... It's the way people say things and, what room they're in and how it's cut. That all tells the story as well, so it's difficult to know. So I can't really remember a lot of it. But
well, sucks for you because I can. Right,
so
number
go
one.
on, what's your predictions? Go on.
Anthony Hopkins is not gone.
No.
I think there was an episode where we saw him making I can't even remember the names now of what.
He was making
a robot.
He was making another robot.
That's him.
That's going to be him.
So I think his human version may be dead, but I think he's transferred his consciousness into that.
It's either human him is dead and he's sort of got the opinion, well, the robot's the future, the obvious next step is for me to go into this robot.
Yeah.
or to at least to program it with my consciousness in some way and see how it develops. So either the human him is dead, or that was a robot version of him. He was staging his own death. Yeah. One or the other, but he's not gone. He's definitely going to be back.
Definitely. It seems, I think anyway, that Bernard is in the background trying to sabotage Anthony Hopkins a little bit. And Anthony Hopkins wants them to live, so it would be perfect, like symmetry.
Yeah.
See, now my big theory is that little female assistant, can't remember her name, that worked with Bernard closely, who disappeared in like the old theatre.
Yeah.
She is still alive.
Yeah. I think
Bernard kidnapped her, and that she's gonna help him save everyone in the second
season. She had, like, just from a purely sort of cinematic perspective, she has to be alive.
So I think that's where this season's gonna go. And I'm excited. I'm really excited. I can't wait. I hope it just doesn't become a shoot 'em up for the second season.
Yeah, I'm worried about that as well. I'm worried that it's just going to become a Western. Not that I love Westerns. They're like one of my favourite movies.
But this was a Western too. But it's both.
It is, but it's very much what I enjoyed about Westworld is the sort of the cerebral side of it, about the
bicameral mind and
the bicameral mind and stuff, and just, you know, what does it mean to be alive, and all these sort of political intrigue and machinations in the background. That's what I enjoyed, rather than the shooting and the chasing and all that. So I hope the second season doesn't just rest on that. I hope there's more to it.
Yeah. I wonder as well if the robots are going to start getting the same joy that humans get out of torturing someone, because they don't think there's any point to a human, because they can't live forever, so what's the point of them? Whereas they'll live forever. And then in a way, they've become the humans, the things they didn't like about them. So will that matter to them? Will that challenge them?
It's a good question.
I'm so excited. I can't wait. So expect some Westworld themed questions in the next few weeks.
Yeah. And just essentially, I think you can just, while watching Westworld, you can just listen to The Humans Are Dead by
Humans Are Dead.
The Flight of the Conchords, and that is essentially the storyline, isn't it?
Can't we all just get along with the humans?
Can't you see the irony that we killed the humans for their violent tendencies?
No, because they are
silence. Dead. Seize him.
Pew, pew. Okay, anyway, that was a little Flight of the Conchords interlude for you. Okay, so that was our little mini question.
Nice.
I'm guessing you don't have a creature feature.
How dare you suggest? Like,
I have a confession though.
Go on.
I've completely stole our creature feature, and now on Instagram, I've just been posting animal facts because this was so much fun that I just stole them and drew them. So if you want to come and see my creature features on Instagram,
give them your Instagram.
No, I wouldn't ever plug
Doodlezilla
_
So yeah, if you want to see some creature features, they've been moved to Tanya's Instagram page.
So
do
now,
you call them pages? Is it an Instagram page?
It's a overall. Oh, Leah's got a new phone, and he finally, for the first time, is using Instagram and everything, and it's blowing your mind, isn't it?
It is a bit, because it's just I've deliberately made an effort to stay away from social media.
They know. You tell them every week.
Yeah, because it's just, you know, I'm essentially from the 1930s, and I find this idea of people knowing things about me and knowing my name and knowing stuff really, I find that very disconcerting. You know, this is a sci-fi podcast. I know. All about how technology knows everything about you. Yeah, I just don't like it. It's fiction. That's the bit you like. Yeah, the fiction bit is my favourite bit about it. So, okay, so what is your fact for the week? I don't have one. You don't have one? No. I was trying to make you feel guilty, but yes, of course, I don't have a creature feature. Do you want me to make one up? No. Okay. I don't want you to wake one up. Right, okay. But I suppose the feature part of the creature feature thing is I would tell everyone to go and watch Lost in Space on Netflix. There's lots of creatures in that. Robbie the robot's in it. Yeah, Robbie the robot. He's a bit changed from the original. He's different. Yeah, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm really liking it. Yeah, it's kind of a good combination of it's kind of cheesy in with the way the old TV show was, but not too much. But it's also quite well done. It's a little bit like the new Star Trek movies rather than the new Star Trek TV show. And it's more about smaller. It's a small group of people, so it's more insular. Yeah. But on huge scales because it's big science feature show. Yeah, it does have that sort of what would you call it? Like the American settler type feel to it a little bit. but it's got enough to keep you interested. Is
And
what
a
I'd
good
say.
mix of characters.
There's good, interesting characters, and Dr. Smith's very interesting. So it's good. Yes, I would sort of encourage people to watch it.
And the main guy is the son of Maggie Smith, McGonagall's son.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Wow, this has been very heavy TV themed to start off this podcast this week.
Well, sci-fi TV themed, and it's supposed to be about sci-fi, so that's surely fine, isn't
fitting.
it?
Okay, are you ready for our new world rule?
I think so.
Okay, so this week it comes to us from my brother, who suggested this.
He suggested a few now, hasn't he?
He has, but weirdly, he's always kind of suggesting ones that I was really going to do this in the next few weeks.
Oh,
then,
yeah.
No, when you hear it, you'll be like, oh, yeah,
Okay.
Tanya was definitely going to do this one soon. So, but he read a book, which I haven't read. I got this idea from somewhere else. So he read a book called The Game, and the E is in number 3. And it's the first book is called Opening Moves, I think. And it is by...
Isn't this a pickup artist book, The Game?
No,
By
that's
Neil
why...
Strauss?
That's why it's got a 3.
Oh, okay. I thought you were picking up 3 girls. That's just...
And I think the author is Cosimo Yap.
Of course it is.
I'm guessing that's a fake name, but it's an awesome name.
Yeah.
Cosimo Yap.
Cosimo Yap.
So, in this book, we're going to do slightly different, but in this book, aliens have come to Earth and they bring a very advanced AR. So a bit Ready Player One themed as well.
AR? What's an AR?
VR, sorry, not
AR.
Okay. They bring a very advanced VR, and the whole of the galaxy fights its wars electronically through the VR.
Right, okay.
So when he said that, what do you think came to my mind?
I'm instantly thinking Star Trek.
Star Trek, and that's what I said to him. That's what I was thinking of doing.
Mm.
So there is an episode of Star Trek, the season 1,
The original
best
series.
season, called, and there's an episode called, I wrote it down, A Taste of Armageddon.
Okay.
So do you want to explain to everyone what happens in that episode?
Well, from my memory of that episode, it's one of my favourite Star Trek episodes.
It is. That's why I want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's a good one, and it's kind of my favourite because it shows the greatness of Star Trek in these sort of strange ideas, but also it's like I love Captain Kirk, but this is just he goes into pure just insane Kirk mode in this episode, which I like. Which is like he's usually wrong about things.
So what's the premise?
So the premise of the show is that they arrive on this planet and they essentially simulate war between the two. I think there's only 2 countries.
Planet.
Is it a neighbouring planet? Yeah. Okay, so there's 2 neighbouring planets, and rather than actually go to war and fire missiles at each other and have space battles and stuff, they simulate the war through kind of like a sort of intergalactic version of battleships or something.
It's a computer simulated war.
Yeah, so it's a computer simulated war. And what they do is, so if they say, well, in this computer simulation, the enemy bombed this city, killing 20,000 people, for example. What they'll do is 20,000 people in that city then have to go into like a... essentially like a suicide booth.
It's called a disintegration booth.
That's right, disintegration booth. They go into a disintegration booth and they're all killed.
But you've missed one important point. Only the losing country has to do this. The winning country doesn't. Nobody dies. It's only the losing country that retroactively has to kill these people.
Oh, I thought if you fired a missile and it said this city was hit, then they have to... No, I think what you mean is it's the whoever's the target of the attack. So what they do, essentially the reason why they do it is because what they say is, okay, a missile hit our city. We have 2 options. One, we can either not disintegrate the people and just say, oh, well, we're not going to go through and do it. And their logic is, well, what are the opposition going to do? They're going to actually fire a real missile, which will then hit your city really, and it will actually destroy all the infrastructure. It'll destroy the buildings, which will then create sanitation issues, which will create disease.
Injure people as well as kill them.
So what they're saying is, it's better, rather than doing that, it's better for us to just send 20,000 people into the disintegration booth, kill them all, and then the city's intact, the sanitation's intact, the roads are intact, nothing else gets damaged. And they do it that way. And Kirk goes ballistic about this because he's like, how dare you? You should actually really bomb the cities and do it the old-fashioned way.
But it's funny, isn't it? Because even as you're describing it, you sound mental. Because you sound like, let's just murder everyone. But it's funny when you to think of the line of common sense.
Yeah.
The line of common sense makes sense. Like, obviously, that was the stupidest sentence I've ever said. you can see why they would have come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
And when Kirk arrives, all he sees is the people about to die for what he can interpret as no reason.
Yeah.
But there's that important step where you step back, where it's like, yeah, but they would have died anyway.
Yeah.
Like, we know they would have died because we know they have the capability of sending that missile.
Yeah.
Saying all that, I'm on Kirk's side.
Okay.
But anyway, so our new world rule
Yeah.
is we live in a world where we play basically the 80s film War Games
Yeah.
with Matthew Broderick. So the computers will fight each other from different countries, and whoever wins, they win. They win that war, and
Right.
they get whatever they were asking for. So how do you think that would work? What are the social, economical, and philosophical implications? And kind of make it funny, please.
the making it funny bit is going to be hard.
Oh, wait, what are you drinking?
Oh, well, this is the funniest
This
thing
is
of the
like a little
podcast
advert in
because
the middle. What are you drinking?
because this is the most ridiculous drink ever. Pomme de Gris, it is called, which is a harmonious blend of Pinot Gris and apple cider.
It's so good.
It tastes delicious, doesn't it?
Wine snobs will be like, oh.
But the good thing is, it's 8%.
Cookies!
Oh, okay.
That's the cookie beeper.
So let me go do the cookies.
You guys may not know this, but Lee is a secret baker.
Let's go into this issue.
Mm-hmm.
Let's dive deep into this issue. Okay, so, well, we kind of do have an historical analogy of this, almost.
I hate analogies. You know my feeling on analogies.
I know, you do hate analogies.
Do you know, in fact, I read a review of this episode, and this episode was called An Allegory of Implausible Common Sense.
Implausible common sense? Yeah, that's actually a very good way of putting it, yeah. An allegory of implausible common sense.
I meant allegories. I love analogies.
Yeah.
I love analogies.
I think you're thinking allergies.
No,
you
no.
don't like allergies.
Allegories. I hate allegories. Love analogies. Love them.
I like allegories as well, though. Allegories are good.
It depends if you're opening my mouth and shoving it in.
Are they, an allegory is just, where is it better than a fable? But just above a myth? Where's
myths.
it?
I love myths.
You
I'm
love
all in
myths.
for the myths.
How about legends?
Myths and legends.
Yeah.
Good.
Love them.
Yeah,
fables? How do you feel about
Fable?
fables?
How are you telling me it? Are you like, I'm going to tell you a fable?
I don't
You're
know.
like,
I don't know if you
was a
openly.
city mouse.
I don't think you openly declare you are now going to hear a fable,
Well,
unless you're
no.
Aesop, and then you do. Yeah.
Or the Grimm brothers.
Yeah.
I don't mind allegories accidentally, but if you decide I'm going to write a TV show or a film and I'm going to tell you a message secretly hidden, not secretly in this story, then I don't like it.
Well, isn't Westworld an allegory?
No, someone wrote Westworld
Yeah.
about. For me, it feels like, and any show that's written well, is what would happen in this situation. They didn't go, I want to tell people about the inner self and why it's important to love each other. I know what I'll do. I'll write this TV show to tell people that message.
Right.
What's a good way to do that?
Right,
Does
okay.
that make sense?
It does.
There's a difference between... Do you know what the difference is?
Go on.
The writer of Bright said he wanted to write a film about racism. And he worked from there and then decided to make it.
So that's why it's garbage.
Yes.
Right.
And J.R.R. Tolkien said that you should always write a story and let the allegory naturally occur. You shouldn't go the other way around.
So that's why you can read Lord of the Rings and be like, World War II.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like, I'm going to make Mordor the Nazis.
Yeah, and Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is kind of based on history, but he didn't go, I want to teach people to love their sister way too much.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, so there is, in history, a sort of, I suppose you could almost compare it, where in ancient Greece they used to have champions fight on the behalf of the city-states.
Yes! I actually, weirdly, completely condone this idea of a champion.
Yeah.
So, if instead of millions of people dying, one person that decides they want to do it, stepping forward, and that person should be your president.
Yes, yeah, that would be good.
You want to be my king or president or prime minister, you should be the one that fights in a ring.
So what you look for in a head of state is fighting prowess. Is
that
what
can
you're saying.
cut other heads off other heads of state.
Yes, yeah. And I think the Queen would probably
she'd
carve
take
up.
'em.
Yeah,
Take them.
she looks like she would happily just dismember, Donald Trump without a second thought.
With nunchucks.
Yeah, she wouldn't care. She
But,
would feel nothing.
I wouldn't, but that's the thing. I wouldn't vote for them to make any decisions for me.
Just to fight to the death.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, it's funny because there are pros. So the pros of this situation are this: one, loads of people don't have to die. You go, okay.
Very big pro.
That's quite a hefty pro, to be honest. Pro number 2, you don't have any of the damage done to the cities and all that sort of thing. So if you have a great, because that's probably the biggest problem, why humanity where we are now and why we haven't colonized. I remember Arthur C. Clarke said this: if the Roman Empire had never fallen, we would have colonized every star in the night sky. Because if we carried on at the technological trajectory we were on from the Romans, that's where we would have been far ahead of where we are now. But unfortunately, the Roman Empire collapsed, and then and that's where knowledge is lost, isn't it? It's where we sack each other's cities, we destroy each other's.
Yeah, like when people go out of their way during war to destroy historical monuments. Who is it? There is a regime somewhere in the world that goes out of their way to destroy
ISIS.
Oh yeah, them.
Yeah. I was wondering where you were going with this. I was like, that's ISIS.
No, they do it all, but there is another. I read a book about it recently, and they were going out of their way, and that's their only thing.
Well, the Chinese did. Mao did it in the Cultural Revolution.
Yes, when we were in the Forbidden Sea, and there was that sign, and it said these. We were looking at a statue, and it was like the priests and monks of this place had buried these statues under the stone to make sure that Mao couldn't destroy them.
Yeah, like Mao's is he went across China destroying all the. At first, there was certain, like Confucius, for example, like they didn't really know how to take Confucius. So at first, he was kind of pro Confucius. And then once he got support and he was he was in a position where he couldn't be challenged, he started destroying all of Confucius's works, and they started destroying all these sort of ancient philosophical.
How do I know what Confucius said?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Racist? Also, it needs to be indicated that the way to my heart is by starting any sentence with, as Arthur C. Clarke said. That's like if I was on a date and somebody said that.
Would that be the pickup line that would work?
That's my pickup line. If someone came up to me in a bar and was like, you know what Philip K. Dick says? You know what Isaac Asimov says? You know what Proust says?
So did you just say fill up my dick? Is that what you just said?
Just cackled. I would make.
You're so hot, you fill up my dick. Would that work on you? That's gross. That is gross. You are gross.
I want to name the episode that so much, but I can't. They're gonna have to wait until they get to this part to be like, ah.
Yeah, that's horrendous. Yeah.
Hi, Mom. Anyway, sorry, you were making some great points. So So the people aren't dead.
People aren't dead. That's not. Yeah, and it's it's good.
I'm excited to see the colonists.
yeah. It's good. It's good for culture and technology and the sort of integrity of your civilization.
My brother made this point, and I also agreed with him. If we're going through a computer system, surely it means that smaller countries also stand a chance because it only relies on who has the smartest person.
Well, this is very interesting. You should bring that up now because I would say, is that a pro or a con? Because it could be a pro that you're like, well, everybody's equal. But it could be a con because you could have a situation where it's like, well, we're the richest country with the most people, the best technology, but they just so happen in some tiny little despot country happen to have someone who's really good at playing this game, and then they just conquer the world and kill everybody.
I suppose. I understand what you're saying, but I suppose that's almost how war works as well, isn't it? It's like...
Well, not really, because like the reason... you could make the argument that the reason why America, for example, is the most powerful country is because they have the freest political system, the freest economic system, which gives them massive prosperity.
Disagree with you.
But just for argument's sake, you say it gives them... it's the reason why they're the most powerful, why they can afford the most powerful military, is because they have a free market, free enterprise capitalist society, which is free, which is the best way for human beings to live. So if it's the best way for people to live, it's going to make you super rich. If it makes you super rich, you can afford a strong military. Whereas if you're in a situation where it's like, well, whoever's good at this game well, then it doesn't matter what your society like. It doesn't matter what your politics or your economics is
Doesn't
like.
it mean, though, that everywhere in the world, education and making people smarter would be the emphasis? So countries were going to push forward quicker because they're using
But would it be education? Would it just be making that person really good at that game? Or making an AI that's really good at playing that game?
But why do we necessarily have to... If we're going to be doing this, why does it necessarily have to be... I suppose it's strategy, though. And strategy takes all types of intelligence, doesn't it? It's not just...
I suppose, okay, well, now we're going into exactly how is this game played? Is it the champion system where you have one game player from South Korea, one game player from America, one game player from China, and they all play League of Legends, and whoever wins the world? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, because I was thinking about this as well. Oh, wait, do you want to carry on your pros and cons list, and then we'll start talking?
Well, I was just like, to me, that situation I was going to say is like the pro is those people don't die and it saves your civilization. The con is what you said to me is a con. The fact that any country in the world can win the war just because they have one person who's good at it or they have an AI that's good. Why should you? If Britain in the Second World War if this had been the situation and Britain and Nazi Germany had just been like, we're going to have one guy play a game and the Nazis had won that game, why should we just be like, okay, then you can just round up all our Jews and kill them or whatever? Why shouldn't we be like, well, no, we're not going to let you do that?
Yeah, no, you are right. I think, like, ethically, it does depend what the war is about. I think if the war is about ownership of or who makes certain decisions,
yeah,
I can understand playing this game. But I think, unfortunately, there are people that want to do extremely evil things, and I don't think this system would ever work for that. But at the same time, how do you know that's what they want to do? Most people in Germany at the time didn't know that that's what he was planning until he actually started doing it.
Mm.
Is that correct? Would you say that's...
it was hidden we could get bogged down in that historical debate.
But I mean, like, even in America, I remember listening to, I think it was, what was it? There was a podcast about American Hollywood and stuff, and they were talking about how people joked about that's what was happening in Germany, but nobody actually believed it until the war started and people saw what was happening.
Yes, sort of. But even think of it that way then. Okay, let's say you imagine you go by, okay, who has the best people to do, to play a game or whatever it is, however you do it.
Yeah.
I think you can pretty much say with quite a lot of certainty that Germany, if that was the way, Germany would have won the war because Germany they had the best fighter pilots, all the best aces from the Second World War and the First World War were all German.
Yeah, they had amazing technology, didn't they?
Well, they essentially, all the rocketry, which then led to the only reason America, went into space and the only reason America landed on the moon was because of a German rocketry.
Yeah, they went to NASA, didn't they?
Well, yeah, the head of NASA was von Braun, who was the head of the Nazi rocket project.
I was going to say that's a great name, but I feel like any compliment to a Nazi is not a good thing.
Well, like they always, Werner von Braun was like, well, I wasn't a Nazi, I was just a German and I was enrolled to do it or whatever. But still, so if it was brought down to that, the best placed to do that would have been the Germans. So they would have conquered the world.
Such a good point.
And if you look at the world now, who are the best? If it was a game, for example, who are the best game players in the world?
Japan.
South Korea, Japan and China.
I'm alright with them owning us all.
China?
Yep. But I suppose the hard thing is, yeah, you've got to really clarify what these rules mean. And I suppose if we got to this point, would it...
But I suppose the reality is it wouldn't be gamers, would it? It'd be AI. So yeah, AI, because you would have some AI developed to do it. But then, so I suppose you could make the case, well, America is the richest country, so it would have the best technology, so it would have the best AI, so it would still win.
The thing is, in my head, the only way I think about anything is if I was writing a TV show or a film about this, what would I do? And the storyline I would do is that a country that has nothing, that has very bad intentions, would come and kidnap the most intelligent person of the smartest country. Yeah. And they would kidnap that person and they would force them to run their AI for them, and then they would be able to take over the world from the system we've set up.
Yeah, there is that.
At the same time, what if it was more like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? You know when
okay.
all of the gold people?
Yes.
And they all send their fighter pilots. Unfortunately, in that scene, they're actually firing on real people. But what if you...
Well, that already exists. That's what drone warfare is, essentially.
So what if it was that? What if it was just one single person running it? What if it was people on machines, fighting machines. So nobody's getting injured. It's just they're fighting against each other.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting... I think that is what the war of the future will be. Because I think what is the point in spending 5 to 10 years training up a pilot, a fighter jet pilot? Which is why they brought in ejector seats. It wasn't so much, well, we need to save the person's life. Because at the same time, they're sending hundreds of thousands of soldiers to their deaths. So I don't think it's actually the loss of life is why they brought in ejector seats.
Oh, makes me sad.
I know, but the reality is they brought in ejector seats because it costs so much and it takes so much time to train someone to be a high quality, high level pilot. But then does drone warfare kind of in a way, I suppose lots of people would make the argument that's desensitized us to it. You know, Obama did more drone attacks than like every president in American history.
But that's because the technology was...
Yes, you say, but like he dropped more bombs than every president before him or something like that. But because it's drones, we don't really care as much.
But this is the difference, isn't it? It's like, what I'm saying is no human deaths would be involved. So would that desensitize it? Because obviously when you're firing and you do... Well, like we've had this talk before about how every time weapons get advanced from punching someone to death, like when we were living in caves, to hitting someone with a rock, to hitting someone with a stick, to hitting someone with a sword, to an arrow, to a gun. Like everyone is trying to detach the person and step them away from the person they're trying to kill. So obviously, firing a drone is almost
it's as far as you can get away.
Anybody can do it and pretend they're not doing what they're doing. But if you're not actually firing on anything, like nobody's dying.
So that, I suppose that sort of, to go back on your question becomes nonsensical, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you can't be desensitized to death if no one's dying.
Yeah. So do you think, though, the cynic in me would say, yes, we'd fight, we'd win.
I think people go to war a lot easier, a lot quicker over everything because no one's going to die from it. So why wouldn't you roll the dice, see what happens?
How many times would you bring in this technology and then the people refuse to do what they said they did, and then war happens anyway?
Exactly. I think that's the other problem. Is there, how many? I think that used to happen in ancient Greece where they'd have the champions. Well, the most famous one was the Spartans. They had 100 Spartans versus 100. Oh, I can't remember where it was. It wasn't Athens, but it was another city. I can't remember which one it was. And essentially, it got down to there was one Spartan left. And there was two, let's say it's Thebes, there was 2 Thebians left and 1 Spartan left. Well, the Thebians left the field of battle because they said, well, there's 2 of us and there's only 1 of you, you lose. And the Spartans said, well, you left the field of battle, I was still alive, you lose. So they both sort of walked away saying we won. When neither city conceded, they went to war anyway. So so it's already historically happened where people just don't accept the result.
I know, but isn't it better to do that stage first? And hope that everyone agrees, and then if it devolves into that... You
haven't really lost anything.
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah, but I suppose... yeah.
And isn't it a kind of a sign of, like, look how many skilled people we have, and we beat you, and you gave us everything. You know we can do this. We simulated a real war. We had fake nukes that we sent in the end if we had to. Like, you could simulate everything you actually have.
Yeah.
And on the computer, people could only use what they had.
Yeah.
So that if they don't do what they say, then they know they'll still lose.
But I suppose it would...
giving up tactics.
The practical issue here is like, it's let's say, for example, you had you'd have to run the simulation on a neutral system.
So on like a Swiss...
So you'd say like the Swiss a Swiss system or a UN system. And what's
UN
the first
system?
Yeah. Well, what's the first thing they would say the moment you lost? It was biased. Straight away, because that's what I would say. I'd be like, well,
that's
I was
what
biased.
Everyone says about every vote that's ever happened.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I was biased. It was obviously a fix because my guy didn't win. It's like even America had that when Trump won, and they were all like, "Oh, it's a fix," and you're like, "It's not a fix. You just lost." And it's like, and so that's what it would be like. As soon as someone lost in this war on this system, they'd be like, "Well, the system's biased. It's biased towards America, or it's biased towards Russia, or it's biased towards China, and whoever." And then you'd have. People would go to war anyway, but then they'd feel justified. Maybe it could backfire, and you'd be like, "Well, our war wasn't justified, really. But then we did this simulation, and you cheated us. Now it's justified because look, the whole world's cheating us. They're ganging up on us."
Okay, so do you think that this is a very good idea that we won't see, obviously in our lifetime, but humanity won't be ready for at least like 1,000 years or something. Like, do you know what I mean? Until we've evolved to the point where we can have clarity of thought.
I don't think it'll ever be realistic because ultimately
a gun kills people and you're in control of a gun.
Yeah, the way the universe works is might is right. That's just the way the universe functions. If you're the stronger, you will survive.
Aren't we trying to evolve past that with our past our simian brains and trying to?
But even if you have this situation, all you're doing is saying, well, might is right, but what does might mean in that situation? It means the better technology.
Which is why all hail the robots.
Okay, why are you hailing the robots?
Because might is right and they're stronger and better than us. This is always my argument. Every podcast that we have when someone is better.
But surely this is kind of arguing that although in reality might is right, so for example, back in the day whoever was the biggest and strongest, he could kill other people, he was the strongest, whereas now it's whoever has the most money. Money is essentially might, or so that you have that money means you have a huge military, or you have the best money, so you have the best education system, so you have the best technology. It's always might. Isn't the argument that that's wrong? Might isn't right, and that we should be evolving beyond that. So just to say that, well, the robots are mightier than us, so they deserve, that's just perpetuating that cycle.
Isn't their might intelligence?
But even then, so what? So what? An intelligent person deserves something over a less intelligent person?
No, it's not that they deserve. Deserve is a weird word. Deserve has such a tainted past, I suppose. But if there is 20 of us in a room and we are stranded somewhere, and one intelligent person has a plan. We were talking about this yesterday. When there's 20 people in a TV show and they're all about to die, and one person goes, "But I have a plan. It's not a very good plan, but I think this might work." And everyone that has no plan, that is 100% going to die, is like, "This is a stupid plan. It's a stupid plan. How dare you? We've only got 20% survival rate." Surely the person with the intelligence to help the most people in a moral way should be the mightiest.
Okay. There's a lot to unpick in that there, because I think you're muddying the waters a little bit.
I've muddied all those waters.
Yeah.
Try and sift through.
It's going to be difficult.
Find something to drink.
Because there's a difference between saying, in this situation, who should we voluntarily listen to? The smartest person or the dumbest person? We all agree, listen to the smartest person. But this is not
America.
but what you're saying is, well, what we should do is, if the most intelligent person wants to kill us all, they should be allowed to because they're the most intelligent. And I'm saying, well, I don't. No,
that's why I put the word moral in it. The most moral, correct person.
Well, but we're going to have lots of discussions about what is moral and what's not moral, aren't we?
No.
No? Okay.
Oh, it's too hard. Just don't fight, guys.
Why can't everyone just get along?
Okay, let's break it down then.
Okay.
In that episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Do you think Kirk is right or wrong?
No, Kirk is wrong. But that doesn't necessarily mean that
they are right.
Well, yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right, but his reasoning is bonkers, because what they're saying is you can either, I think they have nuclear weapons as well. It's like you can either use a nuclear missile to destroy our city, which will kill 1 million people, and the city is gone forever. And they've already have the missile. They're like, if you don't disintegrate these people, we will fire it, and it will definitely happen. So they're like, what we need to do is put 1 million people in a disintegration booth and kill them all. Now, that situation is a horrible situation. It's not a situation anyone should ever have to be in. But with those two situations, it is obvious that the one is better than the other. It is better to disintegrate the 1 million people and preserve the city than to destroy the city and disintegrate the 1 million people. But Kirk is just like, but back on Earth, we would just disintegrate the people and destroy the city. So why don't you guys do it as well, crazy aliens? And you're like, well, because they've advanced to a point where they recognize that one's a bigger loser than the other. But Kirk can't accept that.
But don't you think the problem with that thing in the Star Trek episode is that they've advanced to a point where they understand that saving property is important.
Yeah.
But they haven't grasped that the reason the properties are there is for the people.
Yeah.
And if you kill the people, the properties almost don't have a purpose. So surely they should evolve to the point where they say 20,000 people would have died. We win. But those 20,000 people now have to listen to our laws or be disintegrated, and that is their choice.
Yeah. Now, if they have that choice, if they're like, okay, we're going to take this 20,000 people into captivity, for example, or whatever, or they're going to be... There's lots of different ways around it. I just think when you're confronted with those two options, they're both really bad options. And the problem is, well, why do you have the right to drop a nuclear bomb on someone's city? That's crazy. There's lots of other stages where you should have stopped this before it gets there. But Kirk's argument isn't necessarily, oh, you shouldn't bomb people. His argument is, do it the old-fashioned way. I don't like this fancy new way of doing it. And that was always the TV show. You're always like, Kirk, you're an idiot. You know, the same way when he goes to like planets and they have, you know, he tells them their Bible is a lie and like all that other stuff, and you're like, well,
I love Kirk.
Yeah,
he's like the worst.
That's why I love him as well, because he's insane. He's actually insane, and he just tries to karate chop everyone who disagrees with him, which is why I love the guy. But he's insane, you know, and
it is a hard one. Who knew we couldn't solve war in 45 minutes?
I know. If we can't solve that, what can we solve?
We can solve
We'll have a crack at hunger. Have a crack at that.
What, with cookie brownies?
Yeah. We can solve that one.
Okay, so would you live in a world where
wars are fought through simulated computer systems?
Yeah, and whoever wins takes ownership of that country.
Oh, God. This is the hardest one.
Can I make another point, though?
Go on.
Let's pick a mythical creature that owns a country. Let's call him King John Poon.
Yeah.
Let's say...
Poon.
Okay. Let's say he decides to bomb London. Okay?
Yeah.
London, the mayor of London, the Prime Minister of Britain is like, I don't want you to do that. We're going to fight on the computer. And he's going to be like, no. Isn't it the right of every person that lives in London to then fight him on a system? Do you see what I mean? Like, isn't it the right of every person that would walk into that disintegrating machine that he has to personally fight every single one of them because he's the person giving the orders? What if it worked like that? What if it was like, you have to fight every single person you want to take
7
control
million
of?
people.
Yes, if you want to take control of every one of those people, you have to fight each one of them. And children can be fought for their parents. Parents can fight for their children.
I suppose
and if the majority loses...
I suppose this is an interesting twist, because what it raises this idea. I suppose it's very interesting because it raises the idea of collectivism against individualism, because essentially the reason why we fight wars the way we do is because, yes, we all agree that we're British or whatever, but we also recognise we're individuals. So it's kind of like, well, just because my government says that we've surrendered, I'm going to protect my family or my neighbour or whatever. So if they're like, oh, we're going to round up the Jews, like the Germans would say, the British government could say, well, we surrender. But the people of Britain could be like, well, I'm not going to just give up my family and my friends and my neighbours. I'll fight each and that's what Churchill was saying, was it? We'll fight on the beaches. We'll fight you in the streets and stuff. He's like saying
in the streets of Britain
to the last man, because essentially he was saying like, we're never going to surrender. We're not going to give up.
It's like those Japanese people that don't know the war is over in the jungles.
Yeah,
they keep fighting. That guy fought for like 20.
Oh yeah, they found him in the
70s
or whatever, and he was. I think they found one. Didn't they find one in the 90s?
Yeah, I read a great book called The Art of Not Giving a F.
Yeah.
And it was talking about a guy so the armies had searched for him for years, and just one guy decided, I'm going to go and find him. And he just walked through the jungle shouting his name and found him. And when the guy came back to Japan, he was horrified that he'd fought all these years and Japan had become what it had, like commercialized, because he was very
traditional.
Communist kind of, like he thought.
He was communist?
Well, he didn't like capitalism.
Oh, right.
And the fact that they were all buying stuff and things, and he was horrified by what he'd been forced to fight for when he wished that no one had ever found him and he died in the jungle.
Yeah.
I could be horribly mistelling that story, but that was kind of the gist of it. It was like, this one man for his whole life.
He was probably a traditionalist, and he just didn't like the fact that
yeah.
it was the modern world had sort of destroyed traditional Japan.
Women were in the workplace.
Yeah, women had the vote and all sorts of horrible things. Ugh.
But I suppose if we evolved to the point where we're fighting via computers, why wouldn't that be the case? Why wouldn't, if the one person who wants to go to war over a country, why wouldn't he have to fight individually every single person? Why do I have to fight his minions? Can't I just fight him?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, I suppose. If that was the rules of the game, I suppose if they're like, well, instead of you marching into the country and having to kill however million people,
instead of voting, you have to go online and fight them.
You have to go online and fight them in this game, and if you defeat them, then they accept that they are now, I don't know, a slave or whatever they are. Or...
No. If you lose, it's still a minority. Like
what do you
majority.
mean?
Well, if 10,000 people beat him, but 3,000 people lose, then we win.
Right, okay. That's interesting. But I could pick that up, but why is that fair? If I beat him, why do I lose?
Oh no.
I beat him, I'm not going to surrender.
Agree. You know what? I'm not running for Prime Minister. So guys, we're fine.
But I think this sort of brings down, this is what my point is. I think that's the problem with it, is the fact that what it assumes that we're all a big collective, that we're a hive mind. It's like, well, this country beat this country. So, well, no, I'm an individual. And you might surrender, but I don't surrender. So that's the end of this discussion. I'm going to fight to the death. That's it.
Is this the time to go on my individualism versus collectivism rant?
Nah,
that's for another day.
Yeah.
Don't move for ambulances.
Yeah, it's mad. It's mad.
But which side? You won't know. You don't know what I'm on about. That's for another day. Yeah, so back to the point. Would you live there? Okay, would you vote for this? Would you vote for this system if the government were like, we're going to bring in this system, nobody's going to have to die for war, but...
Well, it's hard to say. It's hard for me to say this because obviously it's like, oh no, I'd rather people died. But no, I wouldn't vote for it because I think that the downsides of it are a lot worse. I think losing a war through a computer simulation and then they're like, okay, you're all German now, or okay, you're all Chinese now. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's like, oh, well, if you don't, there's going to be a war and they're going to kill people. It's like, yeah, but they're going to introduce laws which are oppression anyway, which will then lead to civil discontent or whatever. So
yeah, you do make a really good point because, initially when you hear this idea, well, first of all, I kind of agree with Kirky. Of course, you would try to stop these people dying in front of you that you can't see why it happened.
Yeah,
But when we talk about it, I'm like, yeah, of course that's a great system. People aren't going to die, so of course I'm going to agree with it. But when you say, yeah, Germany was really smart, they had some of the most intelligent minds in the world at the time, and if this system had been in place, they'd have been allowed to massacre Jewish people because they had some people that were good at computer games. But again... And you'd think, and that's a perfect example, because you'd think, but of course they'd win a war because they've got those intelligent people, but that's not how it happened. So, it's so hard. It's so hard, isn't it? It's like, I remember as a kid, you hear about war and you're always like, peace, no war, don't go to war. But then you think, yeah, but there's people dying that have done nothing. So shouldn't we stop that and help them because they're trapped? But then we have to send people to die for that. So it's... I suppose it's just... This is not funny.
No.
This is not a funny subject.
This is a grim subject. Who would have thought that talking about war and genocide would have been sad? It's usually so hilarious.
As we're talking about this as well, I don't... to me, this seemed like a logical step because of technology. It seems like a logical step to take the people out of it and let the machines fight to make the decisions. But I suppose the really important step we're missing is if we're progressing to the point where we understand the implications of war and things, I know other people did, but I mean, surely the next step is to get in a room and just the two leaders discuss things diplomatically to the point where they don't even have to use a machine. Yeah. If we get to the point where they'll accept the answers of a machine of who wins and who loses, I suppose you should be able to just have a conversation.
Yeah.
Over years and months or whatever. But
yeah, if you're going to be like, okay, well, let's have a big fight on a game, they should be at the point where they're like, let's just sit down and have a conversation until we come to some sort of a compromise.
Oh, we're not going to bomb you because the computer said that you won.
Yeah.
then I suppose
you can just have a conversation in the room.
Yeah, which I'd like to believe. We're never going to get there, though, are we?
Well, if you think about it, we're quite
improved.
we're quite pessimistic about it. But if in human history, we've never been at the point we are now, where countries you can say with almost 100% certainty that Britain, France, Germany, basically all of Europe will never go to war with each other ever again. America and Canada are not going to go to war.
Australia,
America and
New
Europe
Zealand.
are never going to go to war.
All countries that Kanzak is involved in.
You reach that certain stage of sort of civilization where you realise that you can't just kill each other over disagreements. Hopefully.
But, again, though, if we're getting to the point where VR, Jesus. If we're
AR,
getting to the
why
point...
do you keep saying AR?
AR is what is AR?
You're getting AI and VR mixed up, aren't you?
AI is a computer. If we get to the point where VR is such a big thing, will countries even exist? That's a whole other subject.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we'll live on the internet. So
well, they've said that about things as well. Like if you had teleportation, would countries exist?
And also, why is my Netflix decided by the country I live in? Why can't I just listen wherever I am? I'm British. Does that mean I have to have a British Netflix? Why do I have to have an Australian Netflix? That's not fair.
Well, now we're getting into all the complexities of intellectual property and copyright and things like that, which is another little hobby horse of mine. But...
Definitely wine-induced conversations.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so would you live there?
No. I think on consideration,
it's just
I'm not going to live there.
It is the hardest one.
It is hard, but if it's...
I'd live there for a while, see how it goes, pop out.
I didn't know that was a choice. I didn't know
it's only my choice.
She made the rules.
I am the... what's the word you hate the Americans can't say?
There's
Jeff
lots
Davis
of words.
says it. He's the compere.
I could care less. Is it that one?
No, I'm a compere of this podcast.
No, he doesn't say compere, does he?
You know what I mean, though,
Oh,
right?
he says comptroller, doesn't he?
He's the comptroller, yeah. I'm the comptroller of this podcast.
Yeah, you don't say comptroller. It's pronounced controller.
I'm the controller of this website.
Yeah.
Of this podcast. Okay, what film is this most similar to?
What film?
We got Star Trek. I know this TV show.
It's very similar to Star Trek. It's very. I suppose it's very similar to whatchamacallit, isn't it? That one with the
War Games.
No, yeah, but also the one which came out recently, the movie of it had Harrison Ford in it. It's got the kids and they fight.
Oh, Ender's Game.
Ender's Game. It's kind of similar to Ender's Game. Yeah,
such a good book. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
It's kind of similar to that, I suppose, with the gold people, kind of.
And this book, which my brother recommended, The Game with a 3.
By Neil Strauss. If you want to pick up girls in the bar.
No, never read that book. It's the worst thing. Be mean to them. Make them feel like shit. They'll sleep with you.
Yeah.
Worst book ever. Dope.
Force yourself on them. Corner them in a room. They actually do say that. They're
you may go to prison.
Yeah.
It's the implication.
It's the implication. Put them on a boat.
Is it a dystopia, utopia, or midopia?
Very good question.
Thank you.
I think it's probably oh God. It's
God won't help you.
Yeah.
Not in this. He's disowned our podcast a long time ago.
Yeah. Nietzsche said he's dead and we killed him. I don't know. I don't
made that sound like Nietzsche's your friend on the pub.
Yes.
Nietzsche said.
Yeah. Freddie.
You never guess what Nietzsche says.
The Nietzschemeister was like, we killed God. I was like, shut up, Freddie. Get the rounds in.
What would Nietzsche drink? Pure vodka.
Oh, no, Dunkels. Bavarian Dunkels. Very much so. Yeah, he's a Dunkels man, he is.
I think he'd drink Jägermeister, but sip it. I don't think he'd shot it. Just sip it.
Just sip it. But I think he would just down it as fast because life's pointless. Just go for it. just drink yourself into a stupor.
Nietzsche is a philosopher, by the way. Not Lee's friend.
No.
I'll put a link down below on who Nietzsche is, and if you don't know,
are you really going to put a link down below? Really?
But I'm going to put the link to is Rick from Rick and Morty
nihilist?
A nihilist. That's the link I'll put.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. So yeah, I think it's maybe a dystopia, maybe a midopia. I'm going to say midopia because I can see the advantages of it, but but it's still kind of horrendous.
This is one of the ones that until you were in it, you wouldn't know which one it was.
Yeah, sort of.
It could work perfectly. It could work awfully, or it could be, as the Three Bears would say, just right.
It very much depends on how it's implemented. Very, very much depends on how it's implemented.
Okay, so where in the world can we find you?
Still nowhere.
You have a phone to look at everyone.
Oh yeah, I'm just creeping on everyone else now.
Would you like the password to our Drinks and Dystopia Twitter so you can write whatever you want?
Oh yes, go on. That'd be great. Although I haven't put Twitter on there yet because Twitter annoys me. But
it upsets your soul, doesn't it?
Yeah, every time I go on Twitter, I go to the Twitter feeds of people I really like, and then I see they have opinions that just make me want to vomit. So I just oh.
If you want to find us, you can find us online, www.drinksanddystopia.blogspot.com, or on Twitter at drinks_dystopia, or on iTunes, SoundCloud, or anywhere else you find your podcast. And if you want to rate and review us on iTunes, it would really help. People will find us, they can complain, and then you might get us off the internet.
Yeah,
everyone wins.
Yeah. But don't feel obliged to do any of these things. Let's not put pressure on them.
So, also, I've just randomly decided, next week, Lee's in charge.
Oh, what?
Next week is going to be a Lee week, and you're going to come up with the mini question.
Really?
You're going to do it all.
Aren't we being bi-curious at the moment?
Well, in 2 weeks then. Okay. You're going to be the dictator of the podcast.
Oh, God, that's all I ever wanted, to be a dictator of something.
See, I know the way to make him do things.
Yeah. You've got to phrase it in just the right way. Lee, you'll be a dictator. And I'm like, I'm in. I'm so in now.
Okay, well,